Okay. Good evening. I am Karen Bechtel, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and we are here for the City School District of Albany High School reopening town hall meeting in alignment with the Governor's order, Department of Health, and State Education Department guidance. The City School District of Albany has been working on the safest way for all students to re-engage in school this fall. We are currently seeking input from all of our stakeholders in the form of surveys, focus groups, and town hall meetings like this before finalizing our plans. Before we get started, I would like to invite the superintendent to say a few words.
Good evening, and thank you so very much for this opportunity to hear what our parents and our community members have to say with regard to looking at some of the considerations that our committee has been working on with regard to reopening at the high school level. We did hold the elementary level reopening meeting yesterday, and on Tuesday of next week, we have the middle level reopening meeting with regard to getting input from our parents and our community members. In addition to that, on Wednesday, that information will be coming out very soon. We will have a forum where our teachers and support staff will have an opportunity to talk about their questions and voice their opinions and ask questions as well about the reopening process. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much to Mrs. Bechtel for leading this work at the high school level, for all of her committee members and the vast number of people at all different levels who have participated in this work. We want to say thank you so very much because this work could not be done without you. And so with that, I turn the time over to Mrs. Bechtel. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Today we are responding to questions posed by our parents about the reopening plans. These questions were collected via a survey. 646 parents and guardians responded to the survey and generated 3,632 questions and comments. Since many of the questions were repeated, we have consolidated the questions and comments to make the most efficient use of our time together. You may not hear the exact wording of your question or comment, but you should hear the spirit of your question addressed in our process today. At this time, I would like to introduce everyone who is with us and then provide a brief overview on our draft framework for reopening. At the conclusion of the presentation, our moderator will address the questions to the panel for a response, and time permitting, we will also respond to live questions with the superintendent moderating that portion of our session. So let me start with Laura Franz, the APSTA Union President and our moderator tonight. Thank you, Laura. We have Tom Vacanti, Apex Coordinator at Albany High School. Thank you, Tom, for being here with us. Kim Baker, an Albany High Guidance Counselor, is here with us as well. Thank you, Kim, for being here. And Frank Del Senor, who is a District Math Instructional Supervisor. So this is our panel here this evening. So let me start with our PowerPoint and walk through our plans that we're in the process of creating. As always, we start with our vision and mission statement here in the district. Our vision and mission and guiding principles, they lead to our goals, increasing student achievement, enhancing the delivery of quality instruction, building our leadership capacity, empowering our families, and partnering with our diverse community. More so than ever, our goals, our mission, our vision are important as we engage in this process of reentry. So this is the high school, actually this is the parent forum, and we are going to provide an update and opportunity for feedback on the planning process and status of reopening schools. This is the right one, yes, thank you. If you have questions or feedback that you would like to provide during this focus group, please use the chat function on your screen. We will answer as many questions as time allows. Okay. I believe that was the right one, but let's wait a minute. And yes, Kent, that is the correct PowerPoint. It just said student forum rather than parent forum, so you can pull that back up. Thank you. So Superintendent Adams has charged the high school reopening committee with developing recommendations for reimagining schools for grades 9 through 12 in the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. She has asked the committee to define the framework for learning in 3 modalities: fully on-site, blended, and fully virtual off-site. The team's best thinking to date, given the parameters, is presented within. The team continues to research, review guidance documents from the Reimagine Education Advisory Council and the New York State Departments of Health and Education, and seek input from stakeholders to inform this recommendation for a very safe plan for reopening that creates the most conducive learning environment within the guidance parameters. This is the Albany High Reopening Committee. This committee consists of teachers, administrators, teaching assistant. This group has been amazing. They have given their time over the past 5 or 6 weeks as we've been working on our reentry plan. They've given their time freely and their thoughts. And they have helped us start to form a plan for reentry for the high school. And I just want to say a special thank you to all of these members that are participating, as well as the members of the committee that are here on the panel tonight. So thank you very much. So required components of our reopening plan. There is going to be parent choice for our high school reentry plan, and that we are looking at a hybrid, blended, or virtual choices, or totally virtual choices. We want academic rigor and accountability, and we are seeking to ensure that that is in our plan. Students and employees wearing masks. Families are asked to provide masks for their children. The district will have replacement masks and also face shields as an option for employees. These are DOH mandates during this time of pandemic. We have the daily health screenings, temperature checks for employees and students. Parents are asked to take their child's temperature daily before coming to school. Contact tracing and coordination with local health department guidelines is a part of this process. We have daily cleaning and disinfecting protocols that are aligned to the guidance. These are all required elements of our reopening plan. We must minimize the shared books and supplies. And then school visitors will be restricted to those who are required for school business. And students and staff will be trained on proper hand hygiene as we re-enter. These are the required elements. So for the high school, what we are discussing is having all classes conducted via an enriched virtual blended learning model. We would have some on-site time, so it would be in-person or virtual daily tutoring, support, assessment, enhancement. That would be what would consist on the on-site program. The schedule, we're hoping, will permit some limited hands-on labs to take place. And when I say labs, I don't just mean science labs. This is your CTE, your music, your art classes. We are working to see how we can have that a part of our plan. Students may be in cohorts of 12 to 15 and in one classroom as a way to keep those cohorts small. We may have grade 9 students attend 2 days a week. Grade 10 and 12 may attend 1 day a week. Our English language learners, we would like to have attend 2 days a week. And our self-contained special education students, we're hoping to have them attend every day. The curriculum. So when life is normal, the students generally they have 8 classes in a 9-period day. That has been our schedule framework at Albany High. And what we're doing is to try to build off of that. We're having, for each class, students may have class 5 times in a 10-day cycle. We're going to focus on high leverage standards and content and prepare students for Regents and other exit exams. Our platform, Google Meet and Google Classroom, will continue to form a platform for our work. Feedback and grading, and I know this is an important question for folks. We're having our grading committee to reconvene to establish those parameters. We know what we need in regards to assessment and feedback for students. Attendance and participation. Daily attendance may be taken in a virtual homeroom during what we're calling pod time. This is like an advisory pod time period. And attendance may be taken in all classes. Many of these details we are working on and ironing out, and we're here tonight to have your feedback as we continue to finalize that plan. Please note at the bottom, no decisions have been finalized. That's why we're here tonight. So what we are thinking about is to have, for general education students, approximately 650 students attending, being in the building daily. For special education, special education self-contained students, approximately 210 students may attend daily. Clement students, approximately 60 students may attend daily. The plan for that group is to stagger the program so that students attend 2 days a week. Our regular security protocols will be in place. We're hoping to have 4 to 5 entry and exit points to stagger that entry, manage that entry. The students may have health screenings, temperature checks, grab and go breakfast or grab and go lunch to eat in the classroom. And we are considering limited student movement and reduced adult contact, keeping those student cohorts at that 12 to 15 students. Students may be primarily located in one space for the duration of the day that they are on campus. Building space. So what we're thinking about is in Albany High School is separating it into 5 pods. So we would have these 4 general education pods, which would be the 3 floors in building 2, which is the new wing, and 1 in citizenship in building 1. 1 pod for Clement in Albany High building 1. And our self-contained special education classes may be assigned through the pods and a Brooklyn, paying special attention to the life skills class needs. Those classes will likely stay where they have currently been. Each pod may have about 10 to 15 classrooms designated for student on-site instruction, and that's exclusive of the classrooms needed for self-contained special education. And each of those classrooms may have only one 12 to 15 student cohort in it each day to allow for daily cleaning after dismissal and keeping that room with just that same cohort. General education and integrated SPED students may attend once a week, except freshmen, which we are considering having come twice a week. And self-contained SPED students may attend every day. Just a reminder again that no final decisions have been made, but this is sort of the framework that we're thinking about. Teachers may be assigned to an on-site pod advisory each week. In this pod advisory period, what we would do is have those teachers facilitate the student access to tutoring, Google Classroom access modeling, and address the other needs during the pod advisory. The teacher in the pod with the cohort of 12 to 15 may be a content teacher of the students in the room. This is the model that we are really working on making right, especially because we would like to connect students to a teacher that they actually have. And in the case of some kids that are in specialty courses in the 11th and 12th grade, connect them with an advisory teacher in that specialty area. We know that that social emotional connection and peace and having that person is important for the success of the student in a virtual environment. So we may take attendance in that pod advisory time. The pod advisory teachers may check in with students virtually each week above and beyond the pod time. Their role is to monitor the students' assignments, participation in attendance, perhaps make contact with the parent, and if there is any real issues, working with administration to fix those. Teachers may conduct the virtual learning using Google Classroom and Google Meet. And as I said, no decisions yet, but we are working hard to pull this plan together. So recommendations for curriculum and instruction. In the enriched virtual blended classroom, we're going to need to compress the curriculum to really focus on those priority standards. We are seeking out an inquiry-based model of instruction that's student-centered. We want access. We want the students to have access to support, tutoring, enhancement, hands-on as needed. And the schedule, the way that we're thinking about it, would be an easy shift to a completely virtual environment in the event the school had to close due to COVID. It's also an easy shift to going back to school in a full-time way. We're working with our regular master as we are building our plan. We are hoping to have direct instruction bi-weekly via Google Meet, and the Google Classroom is a cornerstone for all instruction. So our next steps are to focus on the logistics of entry and exit, transportation, meals, our final staff and student schedules, those advisory groups which are key to our plan, a structure for the pod advisory time, developing robust guidelines and resources for the enriched virtual instruction. As everyone knows, we need to continue to focus on teacher professional development and planning as we're working in a different environment. We want to make sure that we support our teachers as they're delivering academic, social, emotional, and procedural support to students. We want to develop a communication plan for students, families, and staff so that they have clear guidance on our re-entry procedures and protocols. So that brings us, I believe, to our frequently asked questions. So we did, as I said, we had the 646 survey participants, over 3,600 comments and questions in 9 categories. And I'm actually at this time going to turn this over to Laura France, who's going to moderate the questions.
Thank you. And the first question is actually for you, so don't go too far. So this is in regards to virtual instruction. Will students be held more accountable for grades and participation than in the spring?
Yes, that's a great question. And yes, the answer is yes. The New York State Education Department plan requires the district to have a plan for daily attendance. The protocol for the high school is currently being developed, and we're considering taking attendance in all virtual classes as well as the on-site pod classes. And then in regards to grades, yes, our students will continue to complete a variety of formative and summative assessments, including benchmarks and unit tests. The grading committee is exploring the ways in which we can conduct those assessments, whether it is on-site or online. The district currently uses eDoctrina, which is a powerful web-based assessment platform that could be used for this purpose. And additionally, we will examine other kinds of alternative assessments depending upon content area. For example, essays that could be submitted via email, online, projects, labs, So those things will all be under consideration and different than what we did in the spring.
So this question carries on with this idea of the online learning environment and really in regards to hybrid instruction. So what % of instruction will be online and what will be in person?
So students may be scheduled to be on campus 1 or 2 days a week. At the high school, we may be implementing an enriched virtual blended learning model. In this model, instruction is primarily delivered virtually with scheduled on-site and online opportunities for tutoring, support, enhancement, and enrichment, either one-on-one or in small groups with a content teacher. And additionally, we're working on a plan that supports students in participating in hands-on content such as science labs, music instruction, art class support, CTE labs, tech projects, etc., at a flexibly scheduled time during pod time or in lieu of the virtual class on a given day or days. We are still working this portion of the schedule out because we want to provide that flexibility, but we also still want to protect the health and safety of students in our cohort model. So while a percentage is hard to determine with this flexible model, it is fair to say that all the classes will be virtual and the wraparound support will either be virtual or in person and dependent upon student needs. So that's how we're constructing the plan.
So in regards to that in-person instruction, how many students will receive instruction at any given time?
So students may be scheduled into these cohorts of 12 to 15 and spend all their in-person time together in one room for 1 or 2 days a week. And it is actually a shortened time period. So while on campus, students would be in the pod advisory period and attend virtual classes. This structure would allow students to receive support and the protocols of online learning and in-person support from the pod teacher for all classes. The model also affords other time and space when a teacher might ask students to come in for an in-person class due to the hands-on nature of the class. Students would likely be divided to come in on one of the 2 scheduled classes for that week in order to maintain social distancing. And this part of the plan is being further developed as it might require that kids are intermixing more than in this cohort virtual model. So we are really looking into that. We met with the students at 4 o'clock today, and they really emphasized how much they miss the hands-on things in those classes that really motivate them in school. We know it's important.
Thank you. So this next question is in regards to transportation, and it's for Frank Del Signor. How will social distancing be maintained and enforced on buses? And how frequently will buses be cleaned and sanitized?
So for our students that use first student busing, the district would adhere to strict social distancing protocols on buses serving students with special needs, and in considering a limited capacity of 4 students on a small bus and 1 student on a wheelchair bus. All students and employees on all first student buses would be required to wear a mask or other face covering unless there is an underlying medical condition. All buses will be cleaned and sanitized in alignment with the CDC guidance. Drivers will wipe down all high-touch areas after each run, and first student also will implement an additional deep cleaning protocol for all buses. For our middle school and high school students that use the CDTA busing, CDTA is planning to limit student ridership on Tripper and all regular service buses to a maximum of 20, approximately 1/3 of their normal Tripper capacity, to adhere to the social distancing guidelines. Middle school and high school students eligible for transportation can use their swiper card or student ID to ride any CDTA bus and must follow all the CDTA guidance. CDTA strongly recommends that all riders, including students, wear a mask or other face covering in alignment with Governor Cuomo's executive order requiring masks in public when social distancing guidelines of 6 feet or more cannot be observed. CDT also is following guidance from the Department of Health and CDC to keep employees and customers safe. The CDTA has modified bus and facility cleaning processes using a deep cleaning liquid that contains a hospital-grade sanitizing agent. Bus operators have access to face masks, disposable gloves, and sanitizing wipes to do additional wipe downs of their work areas. And finally, CDTA also has cleaners in the field doing wipe downs of buses at layover areas multiple times throughout the day.
Thank you. So this next question is in regards to athletics, and it's for Kim Baker. So what safety precautions will the district implement and enforce to prevent the spread of COVID-19 among student athletes, coaches, and spectators during the fall season?
The New York State Public High School Athletic Association announced July 16th that the start of the fall athletic season will be delayed at least until September 21st, and possibly until the late winter or early spring of 2021 due to ongoing concerns about COVID-19. The association is committed to continuing to monitor and follow all health and safety guidance from the state and will work collaboratively with state officials to ensure that modified and high school athletics are following all required protocols when they are allowed to resume. Our school district will align with those recommendations as we all work together to ensure a safe and responsible resumption of athletics at an appropriate time.
Great. This one's back to you, Ms. Bechtel, regarding safety and security. So what will be done to enforce social distancing, hand washing, and other safety protocols during the school day, including arrival and departure? And what consequences will individuals face if they intentionally refuse to comply? I think you're still on mute.
Thank you, Mrs. Franz. Give me a second. So we will use multiple assigned entrances to reduce the number of students entering, exiting, and gathering in one space. Hall monitors and other staff will be used to support students in maintaining appropriate distance, in addition to signage and markings to help indicate 6-foot spacing. Students will be required to wear masks. Masks will be made available to students who arrive to school without one. Students will use hand sanitizer as they enter the building and will have scheduled time for hand washing throughout the day. The supervisors will be tasked with ensuring staff are maintaining safety precautions as it relates to the above. Staff will be trained and provided appropriate PPE so they may comply with those expectations. Any staff member who does not comply with these expectations will be subject to coaching. And those individuals who do not have a medical exemption may be subject to disciplinary action after successive failures to adhere to the guidelines.
Okay. Next, in regard to health screening, we're going to look to Tom Vacante to address how will screening be handled, the process, frequency, etc., for all students, employees, and building visitors.
Well, staff will be asked to complete a self-screener questionnaire on a daily basis prior to reporting to confirm that they're not experiencing any COVID-19 symptoms. Staff are expected to wear a mask on property and complete a temperature check before entering the building. Temperature assessment will be completed by machine or designated staff person when staff arrive at a work location. Parents and students will also be required to screen their children at home before leaving for school each day for any signs or symptoms. If any symptoms are present, they'll need to keep the child home and call the school nurse to let them know. District staff will take the temperature of students entering the multiple entries at the start of the school day. Students with temperatures over 100 will be brought to the nurse to determine if the child needs to be put in isolation room with supervision, and the parent or guardian will be called for transport home. Nurses will conduct a daily follow-up with the student and family. In the event a positive case of COVID-19, the district will notify and engage its medical director, and the New York State Department of Health protocols will be followed. If a student presents with any COVID-19 symptoms during the school day, The child will be sent to the school's nurse for assessment and to determine if the child needs to be put in an isolation room with supervision, and the parent or guardian called for transport home. Visitors to the building will be limited and screened for symptoms and temperature prior to every entry.
So Tom, continuing on in this vein of health, what procedures will be in place to ensure that adequate supplies of hand sanitizer, soap, paper towels, and PPE are available to students and staff in buildings? How will we assure that students can easily access sinks for hand washing during the school day?
Sure. As you might imagine, the district is continuing to purchase PPE supplies on a revolving basis and using guidance from the New York State Department of Health and Office of General Services to inform that purchasing. We're utilizing different purchasing options to address concerns about delays or interruptions in any supply. Additionally, the district has continued to maintain a central supply of hand soap, cleaning and disinfecting supplies, paper towels, Kleenex, etc., which is dispersed to each of our buildings. We're also ensuring that the inventory levels are looking at 30 to 60-day supplies of these items, items that will be essential to maintaining overall building cleanliness. And each cohort of students will have scheduled times to wash their hands throughout the day, coordinated at the building level to ensure that the classes do not overlap.
Great, thank you. We're going to bounce back to Kim Baker to address the important topic of breakfast and lunch. So where will students eat their meals? And how will you enforce social distancing while students eat and are not wearing masks?
At the high school, when students are on campus, they will be able to eat their breakfast or lunch in their classroom, where social distancing measures are in place. On virtual learning days, the district is working on a plan for food distribution at a site closest to home. We are still working on these details.
Great, thank you. We'll go back to Frank Del Signor to talk about technology and what the district is going to do to provide a laptop to every student and internet access to every home that doesn't have it.
So first, talking about what the district already has done in the spring. Within 5 days of the closure of school buildings in March, the district mobilized an effort to identify households in need of technology and connectivity. Using data gathered from the in-person outreach, more than 3,200 Chromebooks were provided to student homes to meet the need. The district did not have the devices necessary to provide a device to every individual student, so a device per household model was used. Looking forward to this coming school year, on March 26th, we submitted a Smart School investment plan to acquire an additional 4,900 devices in order to provide a device for every student and instructional staff member. Additionally, we began an effort to acquire 600 mobile internet hotspots to address the connectivity need. These devices were deployed to all households in need by the end of April. At this time, there has been no approval of the Smart Scholars investment plan submission, and we are in the process of ordering devices to meet the remaining need. Funding will be a combination of district sources, though we are optimistic that approval of the Smart Scholar plan will provide reimbursement of that acquisition. There is a strong likelihood that we will be able to take delivery of new devices by the end of September and have them deployed to students shortly after. Until we are able to meet the one-to-one model, we are prioritizing deployment of devices to students who will be participating in exclusive or majority remote instruction.
Thanks. And finally, we'll go back to Karen Bechtel to address how will the district handle if a student or teacher tests positive for COVID-19?
The district is monitoring all cases so we can take appropriate steps to ensure that all staff, students, and families are safe. Employees that are experiencing flu-like symptoms, those that have a concern about possible COVID-19 exposure, or those that pursue a COVID-19 test to rule out exposure, are required to report their concern to their supervisor immediately. Supervisors will then review the cases with the district's medical director, the respective assistant superintendent for instruction, and the human resources administrator. The medical director will evaluate the concern and share all positive cases with the Albany County Department of Health to determine next steps. The district will follow a similar process when a student is experiencing flu-like symptoms, if they or their parent or guardian has a concern about possible COVID-19 exposure, or if their family is pursuing a COVID-19 test to rule out exposure. The district will partner with the district physician to evaluate each case and share all positive cases with the Albany County Department of Health to determine the next steps. In most cases, the student or employee will be isolated and sent home if the concern arises at school, and asked to provide the district with regular health updates before they are scheduled to return. The district then will partner with the county health department to make any necessary notifications.
So that's all we have for the questions we received in advance. So I'll turn it back to you, Ms. Bechtel.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Franz, for moderating the questions for us this evening. The live questions will now be monitored or moderated by our superintendent. So we are ready.
Excellent. So we have quite a few questions. Some of them have been duplicated and answered before, but we may circle back just to make sure if there's a little clarification with regard to some of the questions. But I will ask the question and send it to Ms. Bechtel, and then Ms. Bechtel, if there are other people on the panel that you would like to participate in that response, please feel free to do so. So the first one is, not sure if we have made these determinations at this time because it's a little detailed, but if we have students that are scheduled to take geometry at the high school, how would that look in a live classroom setting, blended or virtual setting? How will scheduling conflicts be avoided? And also there are questions that relate to the middle level, but mainly if the student is taking the course at the high school and they are a middle school student, have we delved deeply enough to understand what that might look like?
Yeah, I think actually I can answer that question. Most of the time when kids from the middle school come up to the high school for geometry, it's scheduled for first thing in the morning, or first period of the day. But regardless, I think that probably what will happen is that we have the student access the virtual geometry program and allow that student into that teacher, not allow that student, but that child would be eligible to access that teacher's pod advisory time and that tutoring time first period in the day, which we'd have to look at how that schedule butts up against what the middle school is doing, but I feel confident that we can find a way to make sure that the student still has access as planned.
As a follow-up to that, are we in a place to explain a little bit more about the pod environment? Are you saying that in the pod environment, students would not be actually receiving in-person instruction from the teacher for their particular classes? In-person instruction seems like an important aspect of going to the building.
Right. So that is one of the reasons why when we spoke about having the pod period and also ensuring that we're connecting the students in the pod with a teacher, the teacher that they are a student of record for. So as I said, for example, if I'm an English 9 student, I'm going to be in a pod of 12 to 15 kids with my English 9 teacher. Now, I won't be with my other teachers, but there will be in that pod area, there will be those other content teachers that may or may not be available to the students in that pod advisory period. A lot of that has to do with the contact that we're trying to limit, but they would have availability to connect with their teacher in the virtual environment in that pod advisory. In the same way, the interesting thing is that with the 11th and 12th grade students, what we're trying to do is put them in a pod with their specialty teacher. So for example, we've done an analysis of kids, and if a student has 2 music classes on their schedule, we are going to work to schedule that student in a pod with a music teacher, because that's an area of high interest as reflected by the schedule. And there should be opportunity in that pod advisory time with that teacher to do some of that work. A nice neat fit was our CNA health program out of Brooklyn. I think we have about 24, 26 students, level 3 students, and we have 2 health CNA teachers. So we are able to schedule those kids in that way. For the underclassmen, the 9th and 10th grade, we are focusing on one of the core content areas, being the pod teacher, in order to stay connected to those areas. We really felt that after our experience in the spring, that we wanted students to have a person when they are engaged with this virtual learning as a way to connect them to that, to provide that support, that modeling, so that they can be successful in that environment.
Okay, this one relates to athletics, and if sports resume, how will middle school students be able to safely participate in varsity level sports, and will there be PE, or will that be a waived requirement?
So let me start with the first. I think the middle school, high school connection, those details are still being worked out. So I don't know that I'm able to answer that tonight, but we will certainly be, it's another dimension that we need to look into. As far as PE goes, PE is not waived. One of the things that we're talking about at the high school level is a sort of like a personal fitness plan and goal setting, a personal fitness goals for students, and how they might set those goals and work to achieve those goals, and then have that monitoring and support of their teacher, and maybe quick lessons about, you know, flexible exercises, or exercises for flexibility. Sorry, we had spoken about that as a way to perhaps deliver the PE program. But all students, we are looking, I mean, nothing's been, we're still in the planning process, but we are looking for students to have their 8-day schedule, the things that they did in the spring, or their 8-period schedule, I'm sorry. The scheduling process that they went through, because those were the courses that they either needed and required to take, or that they wanted to take.
So this one has to do, there are several questions that have to do with parent choice and hybrid versus 100% virtual. So there's kind of a series of them, but let's start with the first one. If parents choose to send their children 100% virtual at the start of the year and a vaccine becomes available, are parents going to be locked in to virtual for the entire school year?
One of the things that I really loved about how we're going through these iterations of the schedule is the ease. We set this as a priority in the beginning, the ease of getting in and out of the schedule, whether we went so that we could have more contact and more in-person learning to fully back in place, or if we had to go to an all virtual model, the student schedule will stay the same, except perhaps if we went back fully back as normal, then we'd have to, the schedule stays the same, but we would need to realign the time. But the ease of getting in and out of the period schedule with the same teachers is very good. So a student who chose an all virtual model and either changed their mind and wanted to come in and take advantage of the wraparound services that are available, and some of that on-site hands-on learning that we are trying so hard to incorporate into the schedule, then we would be able to easily accept that student back in. And if there were a vaccine and we were able to have more and more in-person time, then that student would be an easy change.
So as a follow-up, if a family chooses 100% virtual, can we create a way for students to have an initial in-person getting to know you meeting with their teachers, maybe small groups or outside, since the weather would be nice at that time of year?
Yeah, and the district is actually in the process right now of thinking about how we can orient all our K-12 students to this environment, and the possibility of having to go virtual. We want to make sure that students have their materials and their resources. So we are in the throes of planning that in the beginning days, and that plan will be revealed as it's solidified.
So in regards to virtual learning, will there be consistent and frequent use of Google Meets so that the students can connect with one another and their teachers?
So this is something that we know is important. When we spoke to the students earlier today, they talked about how the live instruction was really key. It is certainly an issue as a leadership team that we are speaking with our unions, our members and everything. We definitely want to offer, not just offer, we want to sort of define how live instruction would work in the virtual environment, and we're working that out in this process.
So there's a question with regard to technology, and I think I'll go ahead and take it because it relates to an extension of a meeting that we had this morning, and we've already answered the question with regard to the one-to-one technology. And so this question is more specific as to, do we have enough technology, for example, on hand right now? And so as it stands right now, we don't have enough on hand today. However, as of this morning, we have had a recent notification with regard to our CARES Act, where funding has been made available so that we can facilitate closing that digital divide in a much shorter time frame. And so we have already been in contact with various companies so that we could proceed with ordering those computers that we need. And so we are looking at roughly that first week or so of September, which puts us right at the beginning of being able to distribute those devices. If we have them on hand, being able to distribute those devices right at the beginning of the year so that we can close that digital divide in a more timely manner. The second question that I will address has to do with, are we planning on the high school being virtual so that we're making physical room for the grade school classes so that they may use Albany High School? At this time, we are looking at that rotating schedule with our high school students. And so the use of the building, we are still considering that. But right now we're looking at how we are using our high school to facilitate the rotation of our high school students in smaller numbers. And so Ms. Bechtel, if there's anything that you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think you said that as well as I understand it too. We're still in the process of completing our plans and analyzing our space needs. But right now that's our status. Thanks. Yeah.
A couple of more questions. And I think we answered that with regard to students wearing masks. And one of the things that we are doing, we are asking, the question has to do with students, if they don't have a mask, how will they be provided, or if they forget? The district is looking at having the replacement mask, and I'm going to tie back into Mr. Vicante's response with regard to the ordering schedule that we have. Lots of tongue tying right in there. But the schedule that we have put in place for ordering and reordering to make sure that we do not run out of materials is a 30-day cycle, 60-day cycle. But our initial stock, if you will put us beyond that so that we should not fall behind. Now, I have to give the caveat, we are not the only school district requesting those same items. And so every district in the country is looking at how to keep that cycle going so that we don't run out of the supplies that we need. But right now, to start the year and to make sure that we're on that proper cycle, we are in a good position so that we do not run out of materials, not just for faculty and staff, but also for the replacement items that we would need for our students. It is now 6:56. And I think we have time for about 1 or 2 more questions. And so this question is, will there be weekly music classes? Will students get weekly music lessons? Will there be concerts? And how will we address orientation for freshmen? So 2 kind of different questions, but let's address the music first. And then our last question, we'll look at the orientation for the freshmen.
So I was just speaking to our fine arts supervisor, Kate Wright, today about music and how we can do it. It is scheduled into our projected schedule just as any class is. So students would have their music class, whatever area it is in, 5 times in a 10-day cycle. And the question is how do we get enough hands-on space where students can practice with each other safely? Now, I'm not sure if folks are aware, but the wind instruments, we've got to have kids now 12 feet apart, and choral too. It's not the 6 feet, it's 12 feet. Kate and I threw out today, would it be possible in the fall for us to do some of that outdoors? She thought the instruments, no, but because you're carrying them back and forth, some of the brass instruments are big and heavy. But perhaps choral. We were looking at the space in those rooms, and because the kids are not coming every day, you automatically have a small group that you might be able to have access in that pod advisory time. But then that would require sort of every day until you hit all your students, because the music classes are multi-grade. They're not just, although they're multi-grade. So these are the kinds of, this is actually a great question to ask, because it illustrates the kind of thinking that we have to do to problem solve around it. But we're committed to those hands-on classes, the CTE courses, the engineering, the technology, the art classes, music. We are committed to finding a way to get there. I know Principal Comerford spoke about, let us get this new system down, and then we'll see about where we are. The nice thing about our schedule is we can go more or less until we get to that right balance, and by keeping kids healthy and safe and accommodating their interests. In regards to the second question about orienting freshmen, I think I spoke to that we are discussing a way to, in those first few days of formal school, how do we get kids in small groups so that they can orient to the new environment? So we are working on that.
So we have a number of questions that are still out there. We will address the questions, of course, by category. We will make sure that these are kept in an FAQ. We will absolutely have them posted with the responses. One of the final questions that I know we've heard in several of our meetings already is with regard to if our pandemic comes back at a higher rate or increases, what's going to be the procedure for closing a school? And I'll just say that school closing guidance will come from the Department of Health and the governor's office, and we will follow those guidelines. So that is not an independent decision that's made by independent school districts. So with that, I'll turn the time back over to Ms. Bechtel. Thank you to the panel for being here. We appreciate your participation and your support.
Right.
So,
thank you, Superintendent Adams. Much appreciated. Thank you, panel, for being here and helping with these questions tonight. And thank you, parents and community, for asking the questions. Your questions can only make our plan stronger. Your wonderings, your concerns can only make the plan stronger. We learned an awful lot from our students earlier today, as we have tonight from you about what is close to your heart. We want to do best by the students. and we are working very hard to make that happen in the COVID-19 environment. So stay tuned for more information. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you so much.
Thank you.